Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Milligan, Councillor Lalande, all in favor? It's carried, thank you. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? None. Open forum. This is an opportunity for someone to speak briefly to whatever's on the agenda. Was there anyone here who did wish to speak to the item on the agenda tonight? Oh, this afternoon. I'm so used to saying tonight. Okay, no one? That's fine. We have no presentations or deputations. We have one item for consideration, which is the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for McEwen Drive Road. And the recommendation is that council receive the staff report entitled Recommendation Report for Draft Plan of Subdivision and Zoning Bylaw Amendment for McEwen Drive Road, and that the bylaw yet to be numbered, being a bylaw to amend our zoning bylaw of 2014-744, as amended to rezone the subject lands from rural RU to rural residential RR, and that be enacted and passed. And two, the council approve the draft plan of subdivision, file S06-2024, in accordance with attachment 2, subject to the conditions of draft approval included as attachment 3, and 3, that the township staff and or its consultants be authorized to prepare a subdivision agreement, and 4, that the clerk forward a notice to those parties and agencies that requested to be notified of council's decision. Can I get that on the floor as a motion, please? Councillor Fenwick, Councillor Milligan, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. And this, I keep wanting to say this evening, this afternoon, we have Amy Shepard here from our planning consultant, Arcadis. Amy, the floor is yours. If you wish to, yes.
We just passed the motion, technically speaking.
Okay.
So if council wanted to, if it was consensus, just to kind of pull back on the motion and call the question after the presentation.
Okay, that's fine.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So did you wish to highlight anything, or how did you want to proceed, Amy?
I do have a brief presentation.
Great.
Oh, actually, I think Jason has it fired up for me. Oh, the microphone. Okay.
Yeah, silver button, red light.
Okay, hello.
Okay.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. I do have a brief presentation just to provide a bit of background on the application and the past public meeting that took place, and then bring forward the recommendations of myself as your in-house planner. Okay, next slide, please. So in May 2024, FOTEN, Planning and Design, who's known as FOTEN, submitted planning applications for a draft plan of subdivision, as well as a rezoning of the subject site, which is located at the terminus of McEwen Road, just below 147 McEwen and south of County Road 1. It was deemed complete. It went through a full circulation and was deemed complete that month. And what they were seeking to do at the time was to build a rural subdivision with 28 lots, a stormwater management lot, an extension of the public road, as well as a public trail. A statutory public meeting was held in June of 2024, and then up till today's meeting, which we're seeking direction from council, there was a series of 3 technical reviews that took place between township staff, their consultants, the professionals from the applicant's team, Quinte Conservation, the county, and many other agencies, as well as receiving input from yourself at council at the public meeting, 5 attendees from the public meeting, as well as 2 written comments and letters of question and concern. So that sort of brings us to today, that this application has been percolating for about a year and a half. When we joined in the summer of this year, everything had been resolved amongst all the various technical reviewers and people that were signing off, except for the condition of karst. And I can explain that as we go through, and some subsequent technical analysis was done with a peer review, and that brings us to this stage where I'm comfortable as your professional planner in-house to recommend the approvals of these applications. If we go to the next slide. So the subject site, if you're not familiar with it, it's almost 25 hectares. It's a long rectangular parcel remnant from a previous consent application in 2022, and that's what created 147 McEwen Road. It's located at the existing terminus of the municipal road that currently has a cul-de-sac turnaround, and it's just south of County Road 1 East. It's located between the hamlets of Newburgh and Camden East, just under a kilometer each way, and it is bordered to the south by Loyalist Township. The property is surrounded primarily by undeveloped rural land, and from my understanding, based on the technical studies and some of the policies, a lot of that land is not farmable. It is what could remain in natural open state or developed as rural. There is some farming activity to the north, as well as some single residential lots that would be considered estate residential. The proposal over the past year and a half, based on the technical comment and review and ongoing iterations with the applicant, they're now proposing 27 lots. So one lot has been reduced, and that was in part to address some of the comments and suggestions from town staff requesting slightly larger parcels and a slightly different configuration. Most of the parcels are 0.8 hectares in size. There are two that are slightly larger. Each lot will be developed with a single house, although your bylaw does allow for that secondary dwelling as well. But the intention to begin with is likely each lot will be developed with one home. They'll each have their own septic system and a well. And with the application, the context plan shows the entire extent of the 27 lot development. I know it's hard to read, so I did a blow up, an enlargement of the north section. And in the application and all the technical studies that accompanied it, dealt with approximate location of where the dwelling might be located, as well as an option A or B to where the septic bed could be located. And that will be further defined as more additional on-site testing is done. The development is likely to be phased. That will be up to the applicant. And the proposed approach forward is that additional karst investigation is going to be done. That will be done on a lot-by-lot basis. We're recommending it be based on the developable land area opposed to the whole lot, because the lots are quite large and a lot of the area will not be developed. When that testing is done, should each lot be shown to not have any concerns with karst and there's an appropriate development area, they will likely undertake the development in 3 phases. It's been recommended and as a condition that the entirety of the proposed extension of the roadway be tested for karst before commencing the first phase, because obviously you don't want a road to nowhere, but they're not going to build the entirety of the road. It would likely be built in phases as well, with a temporary cul-de-sac at each phase. And should karst be found, although the technical studies suggest that that is unlikely, that each lot should be able to be developed, but should, say, lot 13 be found to have karst and there is no appropriate mitigation, the applicant intends then to combine it with an adjacent lot to make it an even larger rural estate lot. So that is the proposed development. And in order to facilitate that development, a rezoning application is required. The lands are currently zoned rural right now, which does permit single dwellings on rural lands, along with a lot of non-residential uses. And given that the applicant is looking to build a residential subdivision, it was deemed more appropriate by the township and the applicant that the lands be rezoned to rural residential, really to limit and focus the uses to those residential uses. All of your site-specific, all of your provisions within the bylaw in terms of lot size, minimum setbacks, minimum road frontage, minimum parking, those are all being complied to by the current proposal. So there is no site-specific necessarily. They don't need any relief from those items. It's truly just to rezone the lands from rural to rural residential. Sorry, I keep hitting enter and I'm not entering, so. So with the application, a full batch of studies were submitted, technical studies dealing with your hydrogeological conditions, with karst, with environment, stormwater management, planning, traffic impact, all the types of studies that we typically would see with a subdivision, and they were reviewed very carefully by internal township staff. They're external peer reviewers, which are Malros, who looked at both the hydrogeological assessment and the karst assessment. And through the year-and-a-half process, there were some updates and additional information provided, and those were circulated as well to the commenting agencies. And at this point, we're at a stage where, as I mentioned, all the technical reviewers, internal and external, are satisfied with the proposed development, that it represents good planning and that it can be developed safely as per the policies of your plan and the county's, except for Quinte Conservation still remains concerns about whether or not there is karst on the site. The applicant's geoengineers concluded that there is unlikely karst on the site. They did 6 test pits, plus used a lot of background information from the hydrogeological assessment and ministry information. Quinte Conservation, although they didn't do a thorough on-site visit when they went down to the area, they observed what they thought could be karst, so they have concerns. Given there was a bit of a stalemate over the past year between Quinte Conservation and GHD, the technical consultant, the township asked the applicant to allow a peer review to be done, which was paid for by the consultant, and that was done by Malros. It was done about 2 months ago, and Malros concluded with GHD's assessment. They agreed that yes, some additional test pits could have been done at the front end, but they agree that the proposed approach to continue to do additional testing in order to fully confirm that each lot can be developed is appropriate, and they feel confident that based on the plan, that the development can go through. That is a condition that is part of the draft plan for approval, that additional testing will be undertaken, it will be overseen and peer reviewed, and that is something that has brought us to this point today in order to be able to bring the applications to you. Next slide, please. The site is currently designated rural by the township official plan, and Schedule C does show areas of known karst. And while the site isn't in a hamlet, it's not within a settlement area as for the provincial policy statement or the county. You do have policies in your official plan as well as policies within the PPS and the county that do allow for rural residential in rural designated areas, so we do not need an official plan amendment. What is being proposed isn't the type of compact development you'd see within a hamlet. It is large lot estates. So in my professional planning opinion, it does meet your policies of the official plan. And I believe that it represents good planning and is consistent with the Provincial Planning Act, the provincial policy statement, and complies with the official plan policies both at the county and the local level. And that includes your policy pertaining to karst. You do have one policy, and I can speak to it if you'd like, but it does allow for development. It's policy 4.78. I won't read it because it's very long, unless you'd like me to. But it does suggest that development shall generally be directed away from lands having significant development constraints, and that it does allow for some mitigation measures. So with this policy in mind and the findings of the engineers that undertook the assessment, we're confident that it's meeting this policy as well. Next slide, please. So as your in-house planner, my planning staff recommendation, which you read out, Mr. Reeve, at the beginning, is that you approve the draft plan of subdivision application in accordance with the attachment which shows the 27 lots. And that approval is subject to the conditions of draft approval, which were included in attachment 3. And there's 62 conditions of draft approval. They address your subdivision agreement, phasing, roads and streets, zoning, utilities. There's a whole number of policies or conditions in there pertaining to the karst investigation that were reviewed by Quinte and supplemented based on their input and reviewed by Malros as well. And then your other typical ones dealing with landscaping, where you're going to put your mailboxes and whatnot. And this is a very common tool. I know it's fairly new to the township because you haven't had too many larger subdivisions. If these applications are approved, the next step would be to finalize subdivision agreement, and that's typically done between your planning staff and then your legal counsel, which is outside counsel. We create that document, it's signed by both the township and the applicant, and it becomes kind of the Bible of what has to happen. And when those conditions are being cleared, it's really technical people that are looking at it. It's your engineers, your in-house chief building official. It isn't a planning matter at that point per se. It's more just making sure that all the studies that they said would be finalized and that the development is built out as per those technical studies to ensure that your roads are safe, that you've got the clear sight lines, that your wells are built properly, that septic is going to be built properly, and that forms the agreement. So that would be the next stage, and a recommendation is if council does decide to approve the rezoning and the draft plan, that they also authorize township for either in-house or externally consultants to prepare that subdivision agreement. And then the last recommendation was that notice of this meeting is forwarded to those agencies that wanted to be notified, or other people of interest. And last slide, please. I think that leaves us tonight with the options of council. And technically, the options are the same for both the zoning bylaw and the draft plan, although you at your discretion could approve or choose one or the other. But essentially, with both applications, you can approve the applications. You could request modifications to either the zoning bylaw to your satisfaction or to the draft plan of subdivision. You could refuse it tonight and request an alternative plan or zoning come through. You could flat out refuse both applications, or you could defer and not make a decision tonight if you feel that you need more information and more time. And I guess just as a note, in terms of the options, if you were to refuse the applications, the applicant does have the right to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and that's because of the timelines. The application was submitted over 90 days ago, so they could appeal for what's called a non-decision if you didn't make a decision. They could also appeal if you refused and take it on that basis. With changes made by the province in the recent years, there's no longer what's allowed third-party appeals. So if you were to approve the applications tonight, the only people that could appeal it are certain special bodies, and those tend to be government bodies outside of the township, but a neighbor or a community group no longer has that right. So with you tonight, thank you. The decision is before you. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Questions or comments, council? Yes, Councillor McDonald.
Hi, thank you. This probably isn't even the right time to ask this question, but I just wondered, because it's in such a rural area, there's not going to be any parks or anything. Would the builders be involved or doing the roads and paying for a nice paved road for people to walk on, or is there any talk of sidewalks where their turnaround is?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of parkland, you're correct. There is no parkland being proposed on site as mandated through the Planning Act and the Township's Park Law Dedication Bylaw. They will be contributing funds that will then be used for parkland improvements or acquisition off-site. In terms of the sidewalk, it's my understanding there, as a rural subdivision, there will not be a sidewalk. But certainly, those are some of the things that can be discussed further. But at this point, no, it's not deemed to be an area that's going to be highly pedestrian. Sorry, Mr. Chair? Yes, you are doing it? No. Okay. Sorry.
I'm happy to add.
Sure, please do.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is the applicant from Foten?
Yeah, hi. Yeah. Yeah, pull up a rock there so that you can speak into the microphone.
Good afternoon. Just for the record, my name is Yuko Leclerc. I'm a planner with Foten Planning and Design, and I have been working on this file with the applicants for a couple of years. I would just, before answering the question and sort of contributing, I do want to just acknowledge and appreciate that council has taken the time to have this special meeting to hear this matter sort of outside of your regular schedule in advance of the holidays like this. I know this is an unusual state of affairs, so I do appreciate everyone's taking the time to do that. Just adding to Ms. Shepherd's comment about the road, the profile of the rural road that's proposed doesn't allow for a sidewalk per se, through Mr. Your Worship. However, there is an intention to have sort of a a gravel shoulder along the side of it, and it would be sort of the same surface as the existing portion of McEwen Drive Road, which I believe is chip and tar. So you would have that, and then a little bit of additional shoulder on each side.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Woodcock.
Hi, yeah. So of course, our official plan seeks to have housing be put into hamlets, and this is not a hamlet. I just know in our official plan, it also says that estate residential development being, should appear in clusters of 5 to 6 lots maximum. This is 27 units, and I know we talked about phasing as though phasing is clustering. Can you help me understand the difference between phasing and clustering in this case, and whether approving this interpretation would influence future estate residential developments outside of our hamlets?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that was the interpretation of township staff, that the way the development will unfold, it will be in clusters. So that is why we are moving forward without needing to amend the official plan. You're correct, it could influence future developments. Typically, subdivisions, given your consent policies, which allow for up to 3 separate parcels plus the retained, generally a subdivision will have more than 5 or 6 lots. You're correct that policies do direct most intensification and residential development to the hamlets. But again, as I mentioned, that's more of an intense format. This is very much typical of a rural. And I think this is a special case in that it's not strip development. It's not chipping up agricultural farmland. It's a remnant parcel that otherwise wouldn't be developed. And so that it's, in our professional opinion, an appropriate form of housing, and I think will help meet the township's future housing requirements.
Yeah, and just to follow up, yeah, I'm not so much talking about this development itself. I'm talking about, are we creating a precedent in the future for sprawl outside of our hamlets, in that if we, so like anybody in the future could say, I'm phasing it in, I'm phasing it in. I'm not saying about this particular one. I think it's in a good spot. It's at the end of a road. There's lots of really positive infrastructure that's sort of already on the way there. But is that going to open us up to future decisions? And then just also side question, because we're talking about the phasing of these clusters, but then in the presentation you also said it's likely to be phased. So can you also just describe to me the difference there?
Sure. Maybe I'll start with the concern about, through you, Mr. Chair, the concern about different future precedents. Each application, as planners, you really have to assess on an application and site-by-site basis, and certainly you look to create subdivisions that are larger than 5 to 6 units are on appropriate sites. It's hard to there isn't really an apples to apples, since each application is so different and each site is so different. Yes? Sorry? Yes?
If I may, through your worship, what I would like to also add to that policy, this is a policy that hasn't come up frankly often in planning applications in Stone Mills, with the number of subdivision applications is quite low. This policy is framed in such a way that it's a little ambiguous and it leaves itself open to interpretation. And I say that because it references this 5 to 6 lots as this sort of a range of lots. We see other municipalities like Leeds and Thousand Islands, there's a policy there that's very clear cut, that you can register subdivisions in phases of 20 lots max. It's clear, 21 lots, can't do it. You've got to limit your phases to 20. This one's written in this sort of 5 to 6. It's kind of suggesting a limit. It's kind of saying that the policy should be developed, that subdivisions should be developed in clusters. But then there's other policy in the same sort of section that speaks to the development of estate subdivisions that have to respond to the landscape and take advantage of the landscape features and so on, and really sort of, and at a landscape scale, 5 to 6 lots doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really jive with that policy. So what I think the conversations around this policy have done is really shed light on, this is a policy that really should be explored further through, likely through the next update to the township's official plan. I know there's just been an official plan update, but this is likely a policy that will have a little bit more attention to it, and probably prompt more of those conversations around how does the township want to see subdivisions develop in the future. In the interim, I think each one would have to be reviewed on a site-by-site basis, but it'll provide that opportunity to have a more formal dialogue, I think, moving forward.
And I think with the second question on the phasing, that will largely depend on the applicant and financing and market conditions, and I think the process of the karst investigation. It was purposely, to my understanding, created as a phased approach, given that they do need to do that subsequent, which is quite costly, honestly, to do. So I think likely they will do it in phases, but, you know, should market conditions and demand and other things align, perhaps it will be fewer phases.
Okay, Crystalie, anyone else? Yes, Councillor Lalande.
Hi. Just a quick question. I missed your introduction. Who are you? Yes.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, my name's Amy Shepherd. I am your in-house planning consultant. I have not been before you many times. I think
Okay,
I've met with
good.
you only twice,
Yes.
I think, and
All
the
right.
last time I sat over there.
Gotcha.
So no, I'm from a firm called Arcadis.
Okay. So the karst topography is a concern of mine, but I'm glad to see how it's been managed, that they're going to continue checking on each property or each site, and that's great. One thing, and this may be totally a non-issue, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. There is alvar on that land. I could see it in your photographs. There's where the land had been stripped for the road, and it's clearly solid rock. There's a alvar savanna on there. I could see from some of the pictures that you provided. So is that classed as a natural heritage land, or is there anything in that stretch of land that would prevent or discourage or not putting I think it goes almost to Napanee. So that's one question. I wonder if you would answer that for me.
Sure, and I think actually Yoko is going to answer
Okay.
that one for you.
Thank you, and through your worship, we had an ecological study done at the very outset of this application, and the ecologist identified two sort of large-ish chunks, one of which is up to 5 hectares of alvar woodland, and what the ecologist did through their evaluation, they determined that the woodland, the spaces, although it's alvar, it doesn't have any of the 5 species of vegetation that are required for it to be protected as alvar at a provincial level. And as a result, it didn't qualify as having significant status or status that needed to be protected. So although it has those features of alvar, it didn't have those critical, like the general features of alvar. It didn't have those protected species. There's a number of invasive species as well that were just predominant in that alvar area. So the ecologist recommended that it did not need further protection.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions that came up in maybe the last meeting, I guess, when I was reviewing the minutes. One was about the ridge runners, and they have a path right through there, and there was thoughts of allowing, 2 options, allowing them to continue with that, or having them go up and all the way around, or an alternate route, it said, and I just wondered what the status of that was.
And I'll defer to Yoko on that.
Can we, yeah.
I'll just, through you, your worship, I'll just ask the applicant to speak to that one. I would note that when at the public meeting, we were still anticipating there being some sort of a trail around the area, so there was an opportunity to potentially incorporate it, and that trail is no longer part of the proposal, so that option, I think, is effectively off the table.
We wanted to keep the trail. Yeah, so we wanted to keep the snowmobile trail. I think the offer was made to the township, and they were unsure if they wanted to take responsibility for it. So we're fully willing to keep the trail there.
Good.
There's a split line between the lots. We want it there.
Yeah.
But
Good.
it just depends on whether the township will take ownership, or we can actually even donate it to the ridge runners if that's acceptable as well. Just
Okay.
Either way.
Thank you. Okay. Sulfur water, one lady had mentioned sulfur, and I lived very close to this road for 5 years, and we had sulfur water. So I'm curious, I mean, if there is any potential for disturbing things, maybe it'd make them better, I don't know. Have you addressed or looked into her concerns about her sulfur becoming worse with 27 houses above her?
Through your worship, maybe I'll start, and
Sure.
then Ms. Shepherd will sort of pick up from there. On the impact of the wells in this subdivision on surrounding wells, maybe I'll start there. The hydrogeological assessment that had been done and peer reviewed identified that there wasn't any direct impact from any of the wells here on surrounding wells. That there were, when the well monitoring had been done, there was a determination that there wasn't a direct impact to the quantity of wells, of water in surrounding wells. And therefore, it was unlikely that the work done in the subdivision was directly affecting wells in the surrounding area. However, recognizing that this is a concern that has been raised and one that the township takes very seriously, there is a draft condition that speaks to this, and this is where I'll turn it over to Ms. Shepherd.
Sure. Yes, as part of the draft conditions of approval, there's actually 6 conditions that deal with well and septic systems, and that includes, subject to final approval, the owner will have to provide the municipality with the final hydrogeological assessment to the satisfaction of the municipality and their peer reviewers, and that the report will detail all of the documentation prepared by Pynchon, and that the development will be constructed as per the recommendations and the findings of the study. And then there is a provision in here where we recognize that certainly there are often concerns, and I've seen it with other applications in the municipality, of concerns of what's happening on one property, is it impacting somebody else as well. And so there is a condition here where the municipality will review those concerns of merit, that they're deemed to be of merit, that could potentially be related as a cause to the development. So that is something that we've put in play here.
Final one, I'm going to have to pull out my phone. I took a screenshot of the report, and I just want to get this right. This has to do with flooding. So in regards to the provincial policy planning statement 2024, section 5.2.8, and it's item B, and it says vehicles and people have a way of safely entering and exiting the area during times of flooding, erosion, and other emergencies. There's only one entrance and exit. It's just one road. And that's on high ground, so that this subdivision's taking place. So I was just trying to envision what would that even look like. And yeah, water runs downhill, I get that. So if there's a lot of snow laying up there and it all melts and it's going to go down the path of least resistance, which is going to be that road. Are there any concerns about that? I guess I would be maybe directing my comment to our roads manager. I have some concerns about 27 plus cars coming down that road at 8 o'clock in the morning and hitting some really awful stuff, maybe.
Perhaps the stormwater management section addresses this, I would think.
And there,
Carry on.
we can all answer that, sorry.
Sorry, Amy, the question's directed to you. You go ahead.
Well, I think with the plan, there are both some drainage easements proposed to help deal with stormwater runoff. There is the pond. There's other forms of dealing with water runoff. This provincial policy statement, in my opinion, really deals more when you're within a regulatory area that is normally deemed to be at risk for flooding and erosion, which this is not. It's not part of that regulatory area. Typically, you're not allowed to develop there because of health and safety concerns. I think Jeff might be able to speak to any other sort of concerns. There was a detailed traffic impact study, and following the public meeting, because I think it might have been some of your concerns or questions raised, 2 road profiles were also done by the professional transportation engineers, and those were reviewed with township staff and deemed to be satisfactory in terms of safe egress and ingress.
That satisfies you for now, Linda? Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
That's okay. Thank you, through you, Reeve-Wise. I don't anticipate knowing the area, having any flooding concerns, especially with the drainage easements on the southern portion, and I think it's the 3rd or 4th lot in, there's a storm pond, so.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, I have one. So your opportunity to speak was at the beginning there, but if council will entertain, this is Yeah, go ahead, just identify yourself and use a microphone.
I'm Brian Casa. I live on McEwen Road. Oh,
Yeah, it's being recorded, Brian, so, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, start
yeah.
over.
Brian Casa. I live at 119 McEwen. My main concern is with the existing road. It's very narrow, and in the summer, it gets very overgrown. And my concern is the safety of the road. I live right at the top of the hill, and even with the traffic we have now, there's been multiple times where you come head-on with another car because the road is narrow. So my question is, what is, like, the township gonna do with the existing road to make sure that it's safe? With 27 lots, probably 2 cars per family, you're gonna be 54 more cars, plus all the dump truck loads that are gonna be going back and forth to build the road. So that's my concern, is what is the plan to deal with this limited road?
With the existing road.
With the existing road,
So
yes.
perhaps
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson could address that one. Thank you, Brian. Thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, through you, Reeve-Wise, that's a good point. It'll be addressed in the subdivision agreement, I assume, when we do the traffic study that's already been completed that I don't believe I've seen yet. If that's going to increase traffic volumes to a level that's going to change the condition of the existing road. Maybe Yuko could answer that.
Sure. And
Go ahead.
through your worship, I would just add, so the traffic study sort of gave some numbers of, based on the number of lots, based on the, the scale of the development. We should expect to see in the morning about 6 vehicles coming into the subdivision, 17 leaving, and then in the afternoons. And when I say in the morning, I mean during sort of the peak traffic hour. That's how traffic studies are sort of generally evaluated. And then in the afternoon at the peak hour, we should see 17 vehicles coming in and 10 leaving during that sort of pulse of the majority of traffic. Yeah, right, exactly. So that's the volume of traffic that the municipality should expect to see. The subdivision agreement will include, detailed design work, detailed engineering design of the proposed road, the portion of McEwen Drive Road that's going to be constructed by the applicants. It wouldn't necessarily explicitly deal with the existing portion of McEwen Drive Road, and that would be an item that would likely be reviewed as part of the application process to see, what needs to change on this road in order to support this development, and that may come down to being maybe the shoulders need to be widened, maybe the vegetation needs to be cut back, and maybe there's some standards that might come out of that. But generally speaking, there wouldn't be any significant changes to the existing portion of McEwen Drive Road as a result of this development. It's sort of outside of the parameters of the subdivision process.
Anyone? Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, like, obviously, we travel in and out there all the time as well, and we've noticed the same thing. Like, in the summertime, the vegetation essentially is so thick that it becomes almost a one-lane road. And so, the traffic study has been completed. I believe the road is sufficient, should we be able to clear the vegetation out. And I think with, larger tax base and things like that, the maintenance on that road would improve theoretically, especially with a lot of people down there. So I think you could add that way.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Councillor Woodcock.
Sorry, maybe you're gonna have to explain to me in layman's terms, but just the 5 to 6 lot maximum, just thinking a bit more about it, because that is our official plan, that is what it says. It was just like updated in 2022 and passed and approved. And I know you're noting in other places it's 20, but that's not our official plan. Can you just explain to me in the most simplest ways how this doesn't go against our official plan? That's all. Like, I'm just not fully understanding.
Yeah, certainly. And again, through you, Your Worship, maybe I'll start. The way that the policy is worded, it speaks to there being, and I'll read the policy, it's a short one. The estate development shall only be permitted by registered plan of subdivision. Subdivisions will be designed as a cluster with a maximum of 5 to 6 lots. So the way that that's worded and the way that we interpreted it and sort of reviewed it with both municipal staff and the planning consultant, or I guess last spring, when this policy review, we looked at this policy in detail. where we sort of landed on the interpretation of this policy is that it's written to ensure that subdivisions are designed in these clusters with the expectation of guiding the absorption of the lots and the sort of the gradual growth, so that you're not dumping 30 lots on the township all at once. It allows for these lots to be, in the way that it's worded, it doesn't sort of impose a maximum limit. That 20 lot example I use because it's written in a more typical policy, like a restrictive policy language. It says maximum of 20. For this policy to say a maximum of 5 to 6, where we landed on this, and where my opinion on this policy is that it's suggesting that we want to see lots created in small. We want to ensure that lots can be built in small groups and in small clusters, but it doesn't say ultimately that your subdivision can only be draft approved or can only be approved in a limit of 5 to 6 lots. It's also such a small increase from the 3 lots that you can create by consent that when we look at the entirety of the policies that apply to estate subdivisions, for this to say 6 lots maximum for a draft plan of subdivision just doesn't align with the overall direction here, where we're saying build lots that take advantage of the landscape. We're saying we want lots that can be serviced by internal public roads. 5 to 6 lots is usually not enough to justify building a road for. It's just not economically viable. It doesn't make sense from a maintenance perspective, from a long-term taxation perspective. So looking at that policy on its own, I can absolutely understand why it sort of reads as a limit on the overall number of lots in a subdivision. But when I look at the overall policies that apply to estate subdivisions, where I land is that it's saying allow them to be built in small groups and ensure that your subdivision isn't creating a stretch where you can't create like a small group, you can't register a small phase at a time. And this subdivision is designed so that it can sort of grow in like little clumps at a time if that's where the market conditions sort of direct them to. But it doesn't have to be built that way, and the policy doesn't necessarily say you have to. It just sort of generally speaks to restricting them to 5 to 6 lots. And I keep coming back to this, the range of it is a very nebulous sort of item to have in a policy like this, and that suggests to me that it's intending for it to be read in light of all of the other policies that speak to those items that I've mentioned. So I know, I appreciate that it's a vague policy, and the answer can only be so detailed because the policy itself is vague, and it's where I sort of come back to, I think as a municipal policy, this is one that would likely benefit from a closer review because it is so ambiguous on its own. It's very unusual to see a policy written in this way, and it creates a sense like this where you could have 5 people read it and probably arrive at 4 or 5 different interpretations of what the policy is saying.
Satisfied? Okay.
Maybe, Mr. Chair, I can add on.
Yes, go ahead, Amy.
It's not uncommon to have either policies in your official plan or zoning provisions that cause confusion. We go through it daily, and groups of our colleagues will each have different interpretations, and I agree with Yoko, and it's something we discussed internally, that when you do your next official plan review, this one needs to be tightened. But I think Yoko mentioned the fact that it says subdivisions will be designed. I think that's the key word. It doesn't say subdivisions will only have 6 to 5 units. It's the design factor. But I totally agree that this policy is one that should be looked at in the future, just to make it more transparent and clear.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I guess I had a few, and I think council has raised all of them. The road width of the existing road was of particular concern, and Brian, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sure that township staff will study the implications of increased traffic on that road and deal with that. That's anytime you have a development of any significance, and for Stone Mills, this is a significant development, it impacts the rest of our infrastructure, the rest of our services, and the rest of residents' experience. So we have to deal with that. That's not up to the applicant. So I'm sure that working together that we can address that concern. The only other thing I had, and it's just back to Karst, Quinty wanted something even more thorough than what's now being proposed, which is a lot-by-lot, I guess, excavation investigation. What more were they looking for? I'm just curious here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the way that the request from Quinty came in was interpreted as they want the entirety of the lot, so several pits on a lot. So most of the lots are almost a hectare large, and what in our minds is logical is you test the location where you're going to be putting the house, the foundation, the septic bed, the well. What happens in the back of the lot that's likely going to remain treed and undeveloped doesn't need to be tested. So that's just the language that we've used in our recommended draft conditions, is that it's the building envelope that will be tested. The entirety of a lot does not need to be tested for karst where they're not planning to develop.
Right.
Through your worship, what I would add to Ms. Shepherd's response there is Quinty Conservation also wanted all of the investigation, at least in my conversations with them, they wanted all of the investigation to be done prior to making a recommendation for draft approval, which is challenging for a few reasons. One is just the overall cost. I mean, the cost of the investigation to do a review of every square inch of the lots effectively, and of all of the 27 lots prior to receiving draft approval is cost prohibitive. It's just, we're looking at potentially six figures in terms of the cost of that investigation, which prior to receiving council draft approval and zoning is just no financier would ever support that and sort of kind of issue financing for that. However, with the issuance of draft approval and zoning, there are enough measures there, enough direction and sort of reassurance there that the cost to do that work can be, first of all, it can be restricted to phases so that it's a little bit more manageable in that way, but it's also for a financier to say, you know what, yes, you've got your zoning, you've got your draft approval, we'll finance this work so that you can go ahead and do it and ensure that the lots are safe. From the municipality's perspective, it also provides a measure here that if the investigation comes back and every single lot is completely covered in karst, that the subdivision can't be registered and ultimately the lots wouldn't be created. So there's no risk ultimately. There's a measure there to protect the municipality against those types of risks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Did anyone from staff wish to make a comment at this point? No? In that case, we already have a mover and seconder, and the question was called. So effectively, we've passed the motions that are before us, so away we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for meeting
Yeah.
on special meeting as well.
Well, it's almost a festive occasion. We're
And
on
we
the
have-
way to having a
And now we all think it's evening, though, when we leave, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's only 3 o'clock.
Yes, go ahead.
Through your worship, procedurally, does there need to be a vote or does?
We did
so I
already. We put it on the floor, and Brandy says effectively we have approved the 4 motions that are listed in the agenda. So, yeah, that's great.
Reef-wise, if I may, if there's any ambiguity to that, or if council members are feeling uneasy, so the Reeve read out the motion at the beginning of the meeting, called for a mover and seconder, put the question on the floor, all in favor, everyone raised their hands. So effectively, that motion has passed. If there's anyone that was not comfortable with that and wanted to revisit, I would suggest that a motion be put on the floor to reconsider the motion that was passed, which you will need a mover and seconder, and then you'll need to put the new motion on the floor. So if there's any...
If anyone wants to
Yeah.
do that, we can do that. Okay.
So you're putting a motion on the floor to reconsider the motion passed with respect to the application? Okay, so you'll need a...
No, I need to use your microphone there, Wendy.
I'm sorry, Reeve-wise, I didn't realize we'd already voted on something
I
that
must
we
have called the question
hadn't heard.
and we just automatically responded
Yeah,
like so many automatons.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't wait till after the delegation.
Discussion.
Yeah, so if you're proposing that motion and no one seconds it, then we stand with the existing vote. So is there a seconder for that motion? There is not. So the original vote on the motion is passed. Yeah. Use your microphone, please, Wendy.
I do have a question, and I'm not sure if you will allow me to say it. There was, okay.
We're still in a public meeting.
So there were, right at the end of this whole thing, there were two points of interest, and one was the 5-lot phase. And I think you had mentioned that it can be restricted to the phases. We were talking about the CARTS topography and the testing of the whole property versus, coming back and doing it after we're looking at the individual sites. So are you saying that there will be or there can be restricted to phasing? So,
Through Mr. Your Worship, what I'm happy to clarify on that is not so much that it can be restricted to a certain size of the phasing. The conditions don't allow for that.
Right.
But what I was getting at there was that the cost of doing the investigation on 5 or 6 lots or a small number of lots in a first phase is going to be a lot less than doing it for the entire 27 lots. That's
Right.
all I was
Okay.
getting at.
and the second question is the road. The traffic study's been done. Jeff said he hasn't seen it yet. I understand that the applicant is not responsible for that, and that makes sense to me. But if there does need to be some road work, based on the traffic study that Mr. Thompson reviews, would we not want to know that information before we approve this?
Well, that's subject to interpretation, but my understanding is that that's outside the scope of a subdivision draft plan agreement. That's part of what the township does to support development. Is that roughly correct, Amy?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. To clarify, firstly, the applicant is responsible for building the road that's going to be servicing their new dwellings. And in the conditions, it is a 20-meter right-of-way, which will allow for very safe passage. Through the past studies, which were reviewed internally over the past year and a half and certainly summarized in the planning justification report provided with the submission, the traffic consultant had no concerns with the safety in terms of movements and turns inbound, east-west. It does sound like it's more of a maintenance issue. I don't know what the current width of the existing part of McEwen Road is. One would assume it's 20 meters as well, but there's some overgrowth. But know that in our current conditions of approval, and which is typical with developments, the applicant is not responsible for the improvements of an existing condition. Sometimes there are circumstances in order to facilitate the development, but that was not deemed required for this.
Okay. Do we have to do any other business at this point, Randy? Yeah, I just need sorry, Rob, go ahead. Councillor Fenwick.
I know this has already passed, but I did want to make a quick comment. First of all, I noticed that when you came to us prior, you were going to leave some large trees up. I believe that is still the case, which is great. The lots are a good size. We're not developing farmland. All parameters, including the peer review of the CARS concern, have been met. All planning applications are measured on their own accord, so there's no precedent set. The Hydro-G study's been done, everything's been done, and the best of all, we're supporting our tax base, we're maintaining our services based on the improved tax base, and you're helping out our schools and businesses. And I personally think this is great, and I want to thank you for investing in Stone Mills Township.
Thank you, Rob. Anyone else? Can I get a confirming bylaw motion, please? Councillor Milligan, Deputy Reeve Davison, all in favor? That's carried. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Councillor Woodcock, Councillor Milligan. Oh, just before we adjourn, Mr. Fenwick has something else to say.
We missed number 10. Sorry, we had notice of motion or direct motion in here? I didn't see that fly by.
Yes, you're right, Rob. Thanks for catching that.
Sorry.
Yeah. And we have no consent agenda. Anyone have a notice of motion for a future meeting? You do.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Actually, I have a direct motion. Yeah, surprise, huh? It is time sensitive. So anyways, some people are familiar with our Olympian or local Olympian, Jay Dearborn, who will be competing, hopefully, fingers crossed, in the Olympics coming up very, very soon. I've been chatting with Jay recently, and anyways, he wrote me a little letter. I'd like to read it. Funding proposal, support for a local Olympian. My name is Jay Dearborn. I grew up in Yarker, and I still call it home 31 years later. I competed in Beijing in 2022, and I hope to return in February to Milano Cortina, I think I got that right actually, Italy for the 2026 Olympics. By the end of this quadrennial, interesting, I have spent just over $60,000 on team fees, travel, accommodations, and equipment. The township has graciously supported me in the past, and I hope you'll continue to do so as I approach the selection deadline in January. The proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child," seems to apply here. I am hoping to purchase a set of runners, which is blades for his bobsled, that will allow him to stay competitive through the remainder of the qualification period. He's requesting $1,500 from the township to put towards that set that costs $7,500, if you can imagine. I've actually held a set. He brought them for me to look at one day, and they're pretty impressive. I am past the halfway point in my season, and I found success in the North American circuit this year, landing on the podium 7 of 8 races. I'm currently in the top-ranked men's pilot in the Canadian program, and I must finish strong in the 6 remaining races to support my odds of being selected to the Olympic team in January. I hope to represent Stone Mills and Yarker this February. Thank you for your time and consideration. And he signed it, and there's a nice photo of him here. And I don't know about you folks, but it's not every day that you get to say you have an Olympic athlete in a township our size. There's only a few hundred in the whole country, and we have, 35 million people, so the odds are usually against it. So I'm going to put forward a motion that we support this gentleman in the best we can. I'm not sure how much money we have in our discretionary budget, but I would like to put that forward, that if we can fund this at all, I would like to put that forward. We do so.
Is there a seconder or any discussion? Councillor Milligan seconds. Any discussion? Any idea what's left in the donation budget, Jason? Anita's not here with us. Yeah. I would like to know before I call a vote. I believe there's enough money to cover that, Rob, but we should just make sure. Otherwise, we might have to ante up here. Yeah, we have supported him in the past. I forget what the last donation was. I think we did. Yeah. We'll just wait and see what Jason comes up with there. Feel obliged to wait around if you don't wish to. Yeah. Okay.
His name is Jay Dearborn. He's a fine young man. I've had a chance to spend some time with him, and I'll tell you, he's representing us well, and he's kind, he's caring, and he's the kind of person that carries the Olympic spirit of sport in the right way for all of us. So yeah, I'm very happy that I had a chance to get to know him a little bit.
And so he's a bobsledder. Is it 2-man or is it a single? Is there a single bobsled?
He runs 2-man.
Yeah.
Oh, should we say 2-person?
In his case, it is.
You're right, in his case, it is 2-man.
I don't think
okay?
there's
We're
mixed.
relieved of that.
Through you, revise the discretionary budget still has about $4,000 in it.
Excellent. So we had a mover and seconder. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks a lot, Rob. Good one. Now, can I get a motion to adjourn? All right, I guess I already did. There's one on the floor. Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Merry Christmas, everybody.